but Tua getting benched, like, is this the right thing to do? And there's a lot of going back and forth. Like, let's remember how that guy got his job. By benching a guy who had won a national championship and been to another. Like, that guy had got his job through this. And I think this always goes back to Mike Golick, forever on Mike and Mike. Always had this take that, like, was always gets so mad that quarterbacks are treated with such kid gloves. When he's like, I don't even think you have to do this. He's like, every other guy in the locker room is always ready, unless you're fucking Reggie White, right? There's maybe 2 or 3 guys in every locker room max. Some teams have 0. That at any moment could be like, yeah, just yank me off the field, right? It's just,
and I might come back 2 series later.
Might come back in a play. I might just get my ass chewed. I know I got to take it, and I just got to wear it. Remember, there was like was it Monday Night Football when Calais Campbell was laid off the field, or it was Thursday Night Football, and like the Ravens had like 15 guys on the field, and Calais Campbell, defending man of the year, is like pleading his case. He's getting screamed at. Like, it's just the nature of the beast for every position except quarterbacks. And it's like, fuck, yank him off. My take is I've become a little more old school with that. Like, like, who gives a shit? Like Carson Wentz. When I talk to my friends in the league, like, how should they play this? They're like, regardless how they play it, Carson can't say a word. He's being paid a premium. They've given him everything he needs. Like, it's called, you got to be a pro.
Like you said, every other guy in your locker room goes, this is my life every day.
Right? I'd even argue that, like, this year, I thought Aaron Rodgers, for the most part, maybe on a couple days after draft, he had said something, but it wasn't even that bad. I think he's handled it as well. Like, he kind of set the bar of, like, if Aaron can handle it like that, like, remember Alex? Like, the bar's kind of set now in the NFL of, like, what high character, high level quarterbacks, you just kind of got to keep your mouth shut. Because if you don't, I think you look like kind of a slappy immediately.
Yep. And if that's how you're feeling and you're just keeping your mouth shut because you know you're going to look like a slappy, but
I think you're allowed to feel that way, right?
Yeah, you're allowed to feel that way, but your performance, like whether or not you respond to it, kind of affects how we think you handled it internally. Whereas to your point, like, part of the reason maybe Brian Flores can do it is because Tua can handle it. It's the kind of thing that if Tua was in his 5th year in the league would feel very different than rookie Tua. And you know what I love about Brian Flores is that he immediately says, like, no, Tua's our starter next week.
Yeah.
It's a wild situation, and you can't do it forever. And Fitzpatrick, I was telling you this before the podcast, feels to me like if he played another sport, Fitzpatrick, if he played baseball, would be like the 4th outfielder on a team. He's with the franchise for 11 years. He's had like 2 or 3 huge postseason hits. He drinks for free. And it's just the nature of baseball is you don't play every day, but you can still be a major impact player. He just happens to play a position where you can't, like, no one's going to trade for Fitzpatrick and try to make him their starter next year in a year that they think they're a playoff team. It's weird, right? Because he clearly can win you football games. He's better than most guys. On any given day, he can look like a top 15 quarterback, but he's not.
The one thing I would say is that for next week alone, I don't know all the playoff scenarios. It still has to be worked out we're recording this before the Titans game. Their best chance to win is starting Fitzpatrick. Like, right now in a vacuum, Fitzpatrick's a better player. I just think consistently, if you need to win a game, but he's balancing this kind of tightrope of, like, it's a weird situation. It's very old school. I think you never see this guy.
Well, you're right. It helps that Fitzpatrick comes in and wins the games because it is a tightrope.
But, I mean, he was winning before Tua got there, right. And I think they've been more explosive on offense with the same random guys. It's weird. I think he's balancing, like, trying to make the playoffs, but also, like, this is our franchise quarterback. Like, I got to keep starting him. I don't want to bench him. It's a weird kind of in no man's land spot to be of, like, there's not really a right or wrong answer with it. There's some short-term right answers. But long-term, like, it'd be hard to not play him in this game, and then you're just, he's your quarterback next year. I don't know. I'm not the biggest Tua guy. Again, like, here's the thing, and there were some arguments last night on going on social media. Like, Pete Prisco was like, guys, they picked the wrong guy. And everyone's like, you're just crushing Tua. Like, no, I'm not even talking. I'm just saying if they would Herbert's a better player. Like, that's not arguable. He's been benched in a month span twice. where they lost the Denver game, but immediately Fitzpatrick takes him down the field. Same scenario. And typically in a benching, I was thinking about this during the game. If we did a study, the majority of teams that benched a quarterback in a game, I would imagine like a true benching, it doesn't happen in the fourth quarter. It either happens coming out of halftime or probably early in the third quarter. Like, to me, the fourth quarter is like, we gave Tua a long fucking leash. I was praying to God, but this is like, it's a little bit of a desperate move.
Especially with teams that are good. Like, sometimes they almost manage it like they're a 6-win team where they like wait a long time, right? It's weird, and they're getting
because I think they're trying to help him out. Like, they're trying to facilitate his success.
You're right. It's this tightrope of like they're doing that at a time when the result of the game because early on it was like, yeah, what does it really matter for the Dolphins? But then they kept winning and they kept winning and they kept winning, and now they're a playoff team and they could win 11 games doing this. It's really crazy.
If you think we did a redraft, for every time that I've ever heard, and I use this and use this all the time, if we did a redraft, there's never been a redraft in the history of redrafts in reality. But they're fun to play on podcasts, and radio, and Twitter.
YouTube.
YouTube. If you did it, does Tua go in the top 10?
What you're saying with everything we know now? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Because now, by the way, Justin Herbert, who Week 16 set a rookie touchdown passing record. Now, again, he's breaking. I think like Baker had the record. Like the game is different, right?
Yeah.
Also, it became just the second quarterback in NFL history to throw for 4,000 yards through his first 14 games with Patrick Mahomes. I think Nick Mullins might have narrowly missed out on that stat, but he belonged. Like this, what we've watched from Herbert belongs in this conversation, right? And then you add to it, like Tua has some box scores that are shocking in some ways when you look at him. Because if you just looked at his completions and attempts, you'd go, huh? And then you look at his yardages and you go, yeah, that matches what I saw, right? As an example, against the Raiders, he was 17 of 22. Who would complain about that?
Yeah. You just told me that alone. Like, Aaron Rodgers have those nights,
for
right?
94 yards.
Yeah.
And he made one throw, I thought, where he like dodged and ducked and dived and climbed the pocket and then throw a bullet over the middle. I was like, whoa. But those are the vast exceptions of the play. You can watch the Dolphins for multiple offensive possessions, right? And not only does he not flash, but they don't even let him do anything that would allow him to flash. You know what I'm saying?
I think his pocket presence is actually one of his redeeming attributes and his feel. I just think like his physical gifts when you watch it and just like making plays, because you go all game long, if you're defending him, you go, and I did it on Twitter. I'm like, I'm not going to judge him, but it's like their talent isn't there. And then Fitzpatrick comes in and bang, bang, boom. They fucking drive 90 yards in the blink of an eye. And he looks like a normal quarterback. It's like, well, is he just not letting it rip? What is going on? Because you're right. You just watch it. You go, something is missing. It doesn't pop.
Yeah,
it doesn't pop.
But I don't watch it and think that like he's overwhelmed. Like I do reserve a little bit for I could see that they just give him no rope, and part of that's on him. But they just give him his leash is really short, and that in 3 or 4 years he'll look different than he looks now. Like because from every other element, right? He's a high level guy, he's a smart guy, he's a high level football guy. Clearly is competitive. I do think he sees. Like you said, I think he does have a good feel for things. Again, when you watch him, you can watch multiple series where they don't let him do anything.
Yeah,
it feels like. So I don't watch him and think he's overwhelmed. It's weird. Like. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. But it's not physical. Like you watch Herbert and just physically he imposes his physicality on the game.
And Burrow was a good example of his team sucked, but it always felt like he was pushing the envelope, right? When you watched him, like pushing the ball down the field. It feels like Tua's almost gun shy because he goes, my guys aren't open enough. Well, it's like Tua, they're just not open on your team. Like look at Fitzpatrick threading the needle. You gotta push the envelope.
Alabama guys are wide open.
Yeah, I think he's used to that. And that's why when I get back to Mac Jones, is he playing on an all-star team? Because I know for a fact Tua was. Like, I know for a fact Tua was on an all-star team.
But we also know, now, you're right. We also know Herbert's talent, offensive talent around him is pretty special, right? He's got some really good players around him.